My name is Tessie Thompson, and at 26 years old, I never imagined I'd be sitting in a Portland apartment surrounded by furniture my parents didn't even know belonged to me. Growing up as the backup child in Phoenix taught me to accept scraps of attention, but when my parents announced they could only afford to take my sister Stacie on their dream vacation to Cabo, something inside me finally snapped. While they were sipping cocktails on the beach, posting photos of their perfect family getaway, I was back home making the kind of decision that would either destroy our family or save what was left of my sanity. What I did in those 7 days changed everything. Not just for me, but for everyone who thought they could take my love for granted. Before I tell you how I finally stood up for myself, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is for everyone who's ever had to fight for the love they deserved. The pattern started early, though I didn't have words for it then. When I turned 7, I spent weeks dropping hints about wanting a princess party like my friend had gotten. I drew pictures of castles, left toy catalogs open to party supplies, even practiced my surprised face in the mirror. My birthday arrived on a Tuesday. Mom baked a chocolate cake, admittedly delicious, and we had a small gathering in our backyard with 3 neighborhood kids. "This is nice and intimate," Mom said, lighting the candles. "Sometimes simple is better." 2 years later, when Stacie turned 7, our living room transformed into a magical kingdom. A professional magician performed for 20 kids, complete with a fog machine and doves. The custom princess cake cost more than my parents typically spent on groceries in a month. When I asked why Stacie's party was so different, Dad ruffled my hair and said, "Well, you understand why we can't do the big party thing twice, right? It's just not practical." But practical seemed to have different definitions depending on which daughter was involved. At 12, I desperately needed a laptop for my advanced placement classes. The school had recommended specific software for the gifted program I'd tested into. "Tessie, you understand money doesn't grow on trees," Mom explained, handing me Stacie's 3-year-old laptop with a cracked screen and missing keys. "This still works fine for schoolwork." That same week, Stacie received a brand new MacBook Pro because she was starting middle school and needed to make a good impression. She used it primarily for social media and games, while I struggled to complete my AP assignments on a machine that crashed every 20 minutes. The car situation at 16 was perhaps the most telling. I had maintained a 4.0 GPA throughout high school, worked weekends at a local coffee shop, and saved every dollar for college. When I asked about getting a car, Dad sat me down for a serious conversation about responsibility and earning privileges. "You can earn driving privileges by keeping those straight A's," he said solemnly. "Maybe by senior year, if you prove you're mature enough." 3 months later, Stacie failed her driving test twice and barely maintained a C average. For her 16th birthday, our parents surprised her with a red Honda Civic, complete with a giant bow in the driveway. "Stacie needs the confidence boost," Mom explained when she saw my expression. "You've always been naturally more independent." The final high school blow came at graduation. As valedictorian, I was scheduled to give the commencement speech, something I'd worked toward for 4 years. The morning of graduation, Mom pulled me aside with tears in her eyes. "Honey, we have a problem. Stacie's cheerleading tryouts got moved to today, and she's so nervous. Dad and I need to be there for moral support." "But it's my graduation," I said quietly. "I'm giving the valedictorian speech." "We know, and we're so proud. Mrs. Rodriguez said she'll record it for us. Stacie just needs us more right now. You understand, right? You've always been the strong one." I delivered my speech to a crowd that didn't include my parents, then watched the recording alone in my dorm room that fall. In it, you can see me scanning the audience, looking for familiar faces that weren't there. College and my early career years should have been my escape. But somehow, the pattern followed me into adulthood. I landed a marketing coordinator position in Denver straight out of college, working my way up to senior coordinator within 3 years. My salary wasn't impressive by big city standards, but it was enough to live comfortably and help my family when needed. And help I did. When the refrigerator died during my second year in Denver, I overnight shipped a check for $1,200 without being asked. When Dad's car needed major repairs, I covered the $800 bill because it would really help us out, honey. Every holiday, I flew home with carefully chosen gifts and contributed to family dinners, often spending more on ingredients than my parents spent on the entire meal. My contributions were acknowledged with distracted thanks before conversations quickly shifted to Stacie's latest drama. She'd dropped out of college twice, first from Arizona State after failing most of her freshman classes, then from community college when she decided the commute was too stressful. At 24, she was living in her childhood bedroom, working sporadically at retail jobs that never lasted more than a few months. "Stacie's just finding herself," Mom would explain during our weekly phone calls. "Not everyone follows a traditional path like you did. She needs more support right now." Meanwhile, my achievements were met with polite acknowledgement. When I received a promotion that came with a $1,500 raise, Dad's response was, "That's nice, honey. Hey, do you think you could talk to Stacie about her attitude? She's been really difficult lately." When I bought my first condo, Mom's main concern was whether I had a guest room for when Stacie might need to visit. When I won a regional marketing award, the family group chat response was 3 messages. Dad's congrats, Mom's so proud, and then 17 messages about Stacie's new boyfriend and whether they thought he was good enough for her. The financial disparity was staggering when I finally calculated it. Over 4 years, I had contributed over $8,000 to family expenses, gifts, and emergencies. Stacie had contributed nothing, but had received a car, insurance payments, phone bills, and countless bailouts from various financial mishaps. "You've always been the responsible one," Dad would say whenever I questioned the imbalance. "Stacie needs us more right now. You understand that, right? Family helps family." But somehow, family helping family only seemed to flow in one direction. When I mentioned struggling with my condo down payment, the response was advice about budgeting better. When Stacie wanted money for a weekend trip with friends, it appeared in her account within hours. The most painful part wasn't the money. It was the casual way my efforts were dismissed, while Stacie's minimal achievements were celebrated like major victories. When she managed to keep a retail job for 3 months, they took her out for a congratulatory dinner. When I completed my MBA while working full-time, the response was, "That's great, honey. You've always been good at school." I kept telling myself that love wasn't supposed to be equal, that families had different dynamics, that I was being too sensitive. But deep down, a voice was growing stronger, asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. Why was I always the one who had to understand? Why was my success taken for granted while Stacie's struggles earned sympathy? And why did I keep funding a family dynamic that consistently left me feeling invisible? I had no idea that a simple vacation announcement would finally force me to confront these questions, and that my response would change everything forever. The promotion to senior marketing coordinator came with a corner office, a team of 3 junior marketers, and the kind of salary increase that should have been cause for celebration. I called my parents immediately after signing the paperwork, practically vibrating with excitement. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said, her voice distracted. "Hold on, your father's trying to tell me something about the garbage disposal." I waited through 5 minutes of muffled conversation about plumbing before she returned to the phone. "Sorry, what were we talking about?" "Oh, right, your job thing. That's really nice, Tessie. You've always been so career-focused." The conversation lasted exactly 3 more minutes before she had to go help Dad with dinner. No questions about my new responsibilities, no curiosity about the salary increase, no suggestion of celebration. Just polite acknowledgement before moving on to more pressing matters like kitchen appliances. 2 weeks later, Stacie got hired at a boutique clothing store. Part-time, minimum wage, folding clothes, and working the register. The family group chat exploded with congratulations. Dad posted a photo of Stacie in her work uniform on Facebook with the caption, "So proud of our girl taking charge of her future." Mom called 3 family members to share the news. They planned a celebratory dinner at Stacie's favorite restaurant. "We're just so relieved she's finally finding her footing," Mom gushed when I called to congratulate Stacie. "You know how hard it's been for her to find her place in the world. This job could be the turning point she needs." The turning point lasted 6 weeks before Stacie quit because her manager was too demanding about showing up on time. Gift giving became another exercise in futility. I researched carefully, spending significant money on presents that reflected genuine thought and attention to my parents' interests. For Dad's birthday, I found a first edition book by his favorite author, something he'd mentioned wanting years earlier. It cost me $400 and required weeks of searching through rare book dealers. He opened it with mild interest, flipped through a few pages, and set it aside. "That's thoughtful, honey. Very nice." It ended up on a shelf in the guest room, spine facing inward. For Mom's Christmas gift that year, I chose a delicate gold necklace with her birthstone, something elegant she could wear to church or special occasions. I'd saved for 3 months to afford the $300 piece from a local jeweler. Christmas morning, she opened it with appropriate enthusiasm. "Oh, Tessie, this is lovely, really beautiful." She put it back in the box and set it aside to continue opening presents. Stacie's gift to Mom was a $15 vanilla candle from the drugstore, purchased the night before. Mom's face lit up like she'd received the crown jewels. "Oh, sweetheart, vanilla is my absolute favorite. How did you know?" She immediately found a prominent place for it on the mantel, moving aside family photos to make room. Later that day, I found my carefully chosen necklace in Mom's jewelry drawer, still in its box, buried beneath a tangle of costume jewelry she never wore. The vanilla candle burned in the living room for weeks, filling the house with artificial sweetness, while my gift remained hidden away. The pattern extended to every aspect of recognition. When I completed a major marketing campaign that increased my company's revenue by 30%, earning recognition in a trade publication, my parents' response was a brief, "That's great, honey," before launching into a detailed discussion about Stacie's latest dating drama. When Stacie posted a selfie that got 50 likes on Instagram, Mom screenshot it and sent it to the extended family with the message, "Our beautiful girl is glowing. So photogenic." I began documenting these disparities without consciously realizing it, saving screenshots and keeping receipts not for any planned confrontation, but because some part of me needed proof that I wasn't imagining the imbalance. My phone's photo album filled with evidence, bank statements showing my contributions, family group chats celebrating Stacie's minimal achievements, photos of gift placement that told the real story of our family's priorities. The most painful part wasn't the money or even the lack of recognition. It was the growing realization that my success made my parents uncomfortable. My achievements highlighted Stacie's struggles, and rather than celebrating both daughters differently, they chose to minimize one to protect the other. "You don't need as much encouragement," Dad explained once when I pointed out the disparity. "You're naturally driven. Stacie needs more support to build her confidence." But confidence built on diminishing someone else isn't real confidence. It's a house of cards that requires constant maintenance. And I was tired of being the foundation that held up everyone else's self-esteem. My role as the family problem solver intensified as my career success grew. Every crisis, every celebration, every logistical challenge somehow became my responsibility to manage or fund. It started small, organizing Mom's surprise birthday party, coordinating holiday schedules, but gradually expanded until I was essentially running a one-person family management company. When Grandma Frances started showing signs of dementia, the family meetings began. We gathered around my parents' kitchen table to discuss care options, medical decisions, and the emotional toll of watching someone we loved slip away. "Someone needs to be with her during the hospital visits," Mom said, wringing her hands. "The doctors need to talk to family, and she gets so confused when she's alone." All eyes turned to me. Not because I was the eldest, Stacie held that distinction by 18 months, but because I was the responsible one. "I can rearrange my work schedule," I offered, already mentally calculating which meetings I'd need to reschedule. I can be there for the important appointments. That would be such a relief, Dad said. You know how Stacie is with emotions. Hospitals just overwhelm her. Stacie nodded earnestly. I want to help, but seeing Grandma like that just breaks my heart. I don't think I could handle it without falling apart. So I became Grandma's primary advocate, spending lunch breaks in hospital waiting rooms, taking detailed notes during medical consultations, and researching care facilities. I held her hand during procedures while Stacie sent thoughtful text messages from home about how much she was thinking of us. When Grandma passed 6 months later, I had been present for every significant moment of her decline. Stacie arrived at the funeral having missed the entire journey, but her tearful eulogy about their special bond moved everyone to tears. Several relatives commented on how beautifully she spoke, how much Grandma would have loved her words. I sat in the front row, exhausted from months of hospital vigils, listening to my sister receive praise for a relationship I had maintained through her absence. The family vacation rental situation the previous summer had been another exercise in invisible labor. Mom mentioned wanting to plan a family getaway, something to bring us all together, but seemed overwhelmed by the logistics. Within a week, I had researched locations, compared prices, and booked a beautiful lake house in Colorado for a long weekend. The rental cost $1,200 for 3 nights. I paid the full amount up front, telling myself it was an investment in family bonding. When we arrived, the bedroom assignments were already decided. Mom and Dad took the master suite, Stacie claimed the guest room with the lake view, and I was directed to the small den with a pull-out couch. You don't mind, do you? Mom asked, not really asking. Stacie specifically requested the room with the view, and you know how she gets when she's disappointed. I spent the weekend sleeping on a lumpy mattress, cooking meals for everyone, and organizing activities while Stacie lounged by the lake taking Instagram photos. When we returned home, the family group chat filled with her scenic shots and grateful messages about the perfect family getaway. My contribution, the planning, funding, and execution, went unmentioned. But perhaps the most exhausting aspect of my helper role was serving as the family's unofficial Stacie management consultant. Every few weeks, my parents would call with a new crisis requiring my intervention. "Can you talk to your sister about this new boyfriend?" Dad would ask. "We don't think he's good for her, but she won't listen to us." "Stacie's been really moody lately," Mom would report. "Maybe you could take her out for coffee and see what's wrong. She might open up to you." "Your sister is talking about dropping out of her job training program," came another call. "Could you explain to her why that's a bad idea? She respects your opinion." I became the translator between Stacie and our parents, the mediator in their conflicts, the voice of reason in her impulsive decisions. Hours of my time went to phone calls where I listened to her problems, offered advice she rarely took, and then reported back to our parents about her state of mind. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was simultaneously too successful to need support and responsible enough to manage everyone else's problems. My achievements were taken for granted while my emotional labor was essential to family functioning. When I calculated my contributions over the past 18 months, the numbers were staggering. Beyond the $2,400 in direct financial support, I had spent countless hours organizing, mediating, and managing family dynamics. I had used vacation days for Grandma's medical appointments, weekend time for family crisis management, and personal resources for celebrations that centered around everyone but me. The text message screenshots on my phone told the story. Urgent requests for help, grateful acknowledgments of my contributions, and then immediate pivots to the next Stacie-related crisis. I was the family's emergency contact, problem solver, and financial backup plan, but never the priority. Despite the patterns, there were moments that made me believe things might be changing. Brief glimpses of the recognition and appreciation I'd always craved. These moments were perhaps more damaging than outright neglect because they kept me invested in a dynamic that consistently disappointed me. The first came after I spent an entire weekend helping Dad organize his tax documents and navigate a complicated business deduction issue. His small contracting business had grown more complex over the years, and he was overwhelmed by the paperwork requirements. I arrived Friday evening with my laptop and a stack of organizational supplies, ready to tackle the chaos. We worked side by side for 2 days, sorting receipts, categorizing expenses, and inputting data into tax software. I explained deductions he'd been missing, helped him set up a better record-keeping system, and even researched a more efficient accounting software for future use. Sunday evening, as we finished the last of the paperwork, Dad leaned back in his chair and looked at me with genuine appreciation. "Tessie, I don't know what I would have done without you. This would have taken me weeks to figure out on my own, and I probably would have missed half these deductions." He paused, seeming to really see me for the first time in months. "You know, I don't tell you enough how proud I am of what you've accomplished. You've got this incredible ability to see solutions where other people just see problems. That's a real gift." My heart swelled with the recognition I'd been craving. This was it. The moment when he finally acknowledged not just my help, but my value as a person. I drove home that night feeling lighter than I had in years, convinced that we'd turned a corner in our relationship. The feeling lasted exactly 4 days, until Stacie called in tears about a minor conflict with a coworker. Dad spent an hour on the phone with her, offering comfort and advice, then called me to strategize about how to help her navigate workplace relationships. The tax weekend was never mentioned again. Mom's moment of recognition came during a particularly difficult period when Stacie was struggling with depression and had become increasingly hostile toward our parents. Mom called me one evening, sounding exhausted and defeated. "I don't know what to do anymore," she confessed. "Nothing I say is right. She snaps at me for trying to help, then gets angry when I give her space. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells in my own home." For once, she was calling me not to fix Stacie's problems, but to seek genuine advice about her own feelings. We talked for over an hour about family dynamics, mental health, and the challenge of loving someone who pushes you away. It felt like the first real conversation we'd had in years. "You're so wise about these things," Mom said near the end of our call. "I don't know how you developed such insight into people, but it's remarkable. I'm lucky to have a daughter I can really talk to about the hard stuff." I hung up feeling valued not just for my problem-solving abilities, but for my emotional intelligence and perspective. Maybe she was finally seeing me as more than just the reliable daughter who handled logistics. But the next week, when Stacie's mood improved, Mom's calls returned to their usual pattern of crisis management and Stacie updates. The deep conversation we'd shared might never have happened. The most significant false hope came during a rare family dinner where the conversation actually centered on my work. I had just launched a major campaign for a nonprofit client, and the results had exceeded everyone's expectations. For once, I decided to share the details instead of deflecting attention. The campaign increased their donations by 200% in the first month, I explained, showing them the press coverage on my phone. We're being featured in 3 industry publications, and 2 other nonprofits have already reached out about similar projects. Instead of the usual polite acknowledgement, both parents leaned in with genuine interest. Dad asked thoughtful questions about the strategy. Mom wanted to know about the creative process, and even Stacie seemed engaged with the conversation. "This is incredible work," Dad said, scrolling through the articles. "You're really making a difference in the world, not just making money for some corporation. That's something to be proud of." "I had no idea your job was so creative," Mom added. "I always thought marketing was just, I don't know, making advertisements. But this is like storytelling for a good cause." For 45 minutes, I was the center of positive attention. They asked follow-up questions, shared the articles with friends, and talked about my work with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for Stacie's minor accomplishments. I left that dinner feeling like maybe, finally, they were beginning to see me clearly. The feeling lasted until the next family gathering, when the conversation immediately returned to its usual focus on Stacie's latest drama. My campaign success was never mentioned again, but we spent 2 hours analyzing her decision to get highlights in her hair. These moments of recognition were like drops of water in a desert, precious and life-sustaining, but ultimately insufficient. They kept me hoping that the next family interaction might be different, that maybe they were slowly learning to appreciate what I brought to their lives. But hope, I was beginning to realize, could be its own form of prison. Each false dawn made it harder to accept the reality of our dynamic, easier to excuse the patterns that consistently left me feeling invisible. I was addicted to the possibility of change, even as the evidence mounted that change was never coming. The bank statements in my files showed $2,400 in family contributions over 18 months. The screenshots on my phone documented dozens of requests for help, advice, and intervention. The photos in my camera roll captured gift disparities, celebration imbalances, and recognition gaps that told the real story of our family's priorities. But those brief moments of appreciation kept me invested in a relationship that was slowly eroding my sense of self-worth. I was beginning to understand that hope without evidence was just another word for denial. The family dinner invitation came via text on a Tuesday afternoon. Sunday dinner at 6. Dad's making his famous ribs. Can't wait to see you. Mom's messages always included emojis, as if digital hearts could bridge the emotional distance I'd been feeling lately. I drove the 3 hours from Denver to Phoenix that weekend, arriving with a bottle of Dad's favorite wine and homemade brownies for dessert. The house smelled like barbecue sauce and anticipation, that particular energy that comes when parents have news to share. We were halfway through dinner when Dad cleared his throat and reached for Mom's hand across the table. The gesture was theatrical enough that both Stacie and I looked up from our plates. "Your mother and I have some exciting news," he announced, his voice carrying the kind of forced enthusiasm usually reserved for surprise parties. "We've been saving up and we've decided to take a family vacation to Cabo, San Lucas next month." My fork paused midway to my mouth. A family vacation. We hadn't taken one since I was in high school, a disastrous weekend camping trip where it rained the entire time, and Stacie complained about everything from the sleeping bags to the camp food. "That sounds amazing," I said, genuinely excited. "When are we going? I'll need to request time off work." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's smile faltered slightly, and Dad suddenly became very interested in cutting his ribs into precise, uniform pieces. Stacie looked down at her plate, but I caught the small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Well," Mom finally said, her voice taking on that careful tone she used when delivering bad news, "the thing is, Tessie, we could only afford 2 tickets. The words hit me like cold water. 2 tickets. "Cabo is expensive," Dad explained, still not meeting my eyes. "We saved what we could, but it's only enough for 3 people total. The flights, the resort, the activities, it all adds up quickly." I set down my fork, trying to process what they were telling me. "So you're going without me." "Stacie really needs this break," Mom rushed to explain. "She's been struggling so much lately with her mental health, and the therapist said a change of scenery might really help her reset." Stacie had been seeing a therapist for 3 sessions to discuss her career anxiety, a condition that seemed to manifest primarily as an inability to hold a job for more than 2 months. "I could contribute to my portion," I offered, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. "I have savings. I could pay for my own flight and hotel room." Dad shook his head firmly. "It's not just the tickets, sweetheart. It's the whole package deal. The resort, the meals, the excursions we've already booked. Adding another person would complicate everything." "Plus," Mom added, "you're so busy with work. We didn't want to pressure you to take time off when you're doing so well in your career." The logic was twisted but delivered with such conviction that for a moment I almost believed it made sense. Almost. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked. "A few months," Dad admitted. "We wanted to make sure we could afford it before getting anyone's hopes up." A few months. They had spent months planning a family vacation that deliberately excluded 1/4 of the family and somehow convinced themselves this was reasonable. The conversation moved on to their itinerary: the beachfront resort, the deep-sea fishing excursion, the spa day Mom had booked, the sunset dinner cruise. Each detail felt like another small cut, a reminder that I wasn't just excluded from the trip, but from the entire planning process. "We'll bring you back something special," Stacie offered, her voice bright with excitement. "Maybe some of that beautiful Mexican pottery you like." A souvenir. They would bring me a souvenir from the family vacation I wasn't invited to join. I made it through the rest of dinner, nodding and smiling at appropriate intervals while they discussed packing lists and weather forecasts. I helped clear the table, loaded the dishwasher, and hugged everyone goodbye with the same mechanical warmth I'd perfected over years of family gatherings. But as I drove back to Denver that night, something fundamental had shifted. The hurt was still there, sharp and immediate, but underneath it was something harder and more dangerous: clarity. This wasn't about money. This was about choice. And they had chosen to exclude me from their definition of family. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces around that dinner table. The careful expressions, the rehearsed explanations, the way they'd clearly discussed how to break the news to me. This hadn't been a spontaneous decision or a financial constraint that caught them off guard. This had been planned, calculated, and executed with the kind of precision usually reserved for military operations. By Tuesday, the curiosity was eating me alive. I knew I shouldn't, but I also knew Dad's computer password, the same combination of Mom's maiden name and their anniversary year he'd been using for everything since I'd helped him set up his email account 5 years ago. I drove to Phoenix during my lunch break, using the spare key they'd given me for emergencies. The house was empty. Mom at work, Dad at a job site, Stacie presumably sleeping off whatever late-night drama had kept her up the night before. Dad's computer sat on the kitchen desk where he always left it, surrounded by the usual chaos of bills, business cards, and coffee-stained notebooks. My hands shook slightly as I opened the laptop and entered his password. The browser history told the story they hadn't wanted me to know. Months of research into Cabo resorts, comparison shopping for flights, detailed reviews of restaurants and excursions. This wasn't a spontaneous decision driven by financial constraints. This was a carefully planned luxury vacation. I found the booking confirmation in his email, and the numbers made my stomach drop. Total cost: $8,547. 2 first-class round-trip tickets to Cabo, $2,400. 5 nights at the Grand Solmar Resort. Oceanfront suite, $3,200. Deep-sea fishing excursion for 2, $450. Couple spa package, $380. Sunset dinner cruise, $290. Car rental and miscellaneous expenses, $827. Resort credits for meals and activities, $1,000. I stared at the screen, doing quick math in my head. Adding a third person would have increased the cost by maybe $2,100. The price of another first-class ticket and the upgrade to a larger suite. Everything else could have been shared or had minimal additional cost. But the real revelation was in the details of what they'd booked. This wasn't a budget family vacation they could barely afford. This was a luxury getaway with first-class flights, an oceanfront suite, and premium excursions. They had spent more on 5 days in Cabo than I made in 2 months. I scrolled through more emails, finding correspondence with the resort about room upgrades, discussions about restaurant reservations, and confirmations for activities that cost more per day than most people's weekly grocery budget. The most damning evidence was an email from 3 weeks ago, after they'd already told me about the financial constraints, where Dad had upgraded their spa package to include additional treatments. The upgrade cost $200, money they apparently had available for luxury add-ons, but not for including their other daughter. My phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram. Stacie had posted a photo of herself shopping for vacation, clothes with the caption, "Getting ready for paradise. Can't wait for some much-needed family time, #blessed, family vacation. Family vacation." The words felt like a slap. I screenshot the booking confirmation, the email correspondence, and Stacie's social media posts. Then I opened my banking app and found the record I was looking for, my $1,200 contribution to their emergency fund just 6 weeks ago, when Dad's truck needed unexpected repairs. The emergency fund that was apparently robust enough to cover luxury vacations, but not inclusive enough to cover their other daughter. The social media posts started the day they left for Cabo. I watched from my Denver apartment as my family's perfect getaway unfolded in real time across Instagram and Facebook. Mom's first post showed their first-class seats with champagne glasses, captioned, "Starting our adventure in style. So grateful for this time together." Dad shared a photo of their oceanfront suite with the caption, "Paradise found. Nothing better than quality time with my girls." His girls, plural, as if I had never existed. But it was Stacie's posts that really twisted the knife. She documented everything with the enthusiasm of a professional travel blogger. Sunrise yoga on the beach, elaborate poolside lunches, couples massage appointments that she somehow participated in despite being single. Living our best life with the most amazing parents. She captioned a sunset photo of the three of them. So blessed to have this quality family time. Nothing beats making memories with the people who matter most. The people who matter most. I screenshot that caption and stared at it for a long time. 26 years of trying to matter, and there it was in black and white. I didn't make the cut. The final insult came on their third day, delivered via text message while I was in a client meeting. "Hey sis, having the most amazing time. Quick favor. Could I borrow your good camera when we get back? I want to make a photo album of all our family memories from this trip, and my phone camera isn't doing justice to how beautiful everything is here. I promise I'll take amazing photos of all our family memories. Love you." I read the message 3 times, each reading making me angrier than the last. She wanted to borrow my professional camera, the $2,000 Canon I'd saved for months to buy, to document the family memories that deliberately excluded me. She wanted me to provide the equipment to capture the moments I wasn't allowed to be part of. The audacity was breathtaking. That evening, Dad posted a photo of the 3 of them at sunset, arms around each other, beaming at the camera. The caption read, "Perfect family getaway with our girl, making memories that will last a lifetime." Our girl, singular. I sat in my apartment looking at that photo and felt something inside me crystallize into perfect cold clarity. For years, I had been trying to earn a place in a family that had already decided I didn't belong. I had been funding my own exclusion, contributing to a dynamic that consistently erased me from their narrative. But as I stared at that booking confirmation screenshot, $8,547 for a luxury vacation, they claimed they couldn't afford to include me in. Something inside me didn't just break. It crystallized into something harder, clearer, and absolutely unforgiving. The therapy appointment was supposed to be routine, but I found myself saying words I'd never spoken aloud. I think my family might be emotionally abusive, and I think I've been funding it. Dr. Arthur Sherman's eyebrows raised slightly. That's a significant realization. What's brought you to this conclusion? I told him everything. The childhood patterns, the vacation exclusion, the $8,547 booking confirmation. I showed him screenshots of social media posts, bank records of my contributions, the text about borrowing my camera for family memories that excluded me. "Tessie," he said when I finished, "what you're describing is systematic devaluation within a family system. This isn't just favoritism. This is financial and emotional manipulation designed to maintain a specific hierarchy. The clinical terms made it real. They consistently minimize your achievements while celebrating your sister's minimal efforts. They accept your financial contributions while excluding you from family experiences. This is psychological abuse. But they don't hit me or scream at me, I said weakly. Emotional abuse doesn't require physical violence. The systematic exclusion, financial manipulation, and consistent message that your needs matter less. These are forms of psychological abuse. He leaned forward. Healthy families don't make one member pay for the privilege of being consistently undervalued. That evening, I called my friend Audrey McGuire in Portland. "I've been waiting for this call for years," she said. "Tessie, I've watched your family treat you like hired help while treating Stacie like a princess. Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you weren't ready to hear it. But healthy families don't make you pay for the privilege of being ignored." Her words echoed Dr. Sherman's assessment. This wasn't about my sensitivity. This was about a family system that had assigned me the role of provider and scapegoat. "What are you going to do?" Audrey asked. "I don't know yet, but I'm done funding my own exclusion." The next morning, I began cataloging every item I'd purchased for my parents' home over 4 years. Credit card statements, photos, text conversations. The evidence was overwhelming. KitchenAid mixer, $380. Keurig, $150. Knife set, $240. Food processor, $180. Cookware, $200. Living room, 65-inch TV, $800. Soundbar, $300. Leather recliner, $650. Coffee table, $280. Lamps, $120. Electronics, iPad, $400. Speaker system, $350. Laptop, $600. Printer, $200. Outdoor, lawnmower, $450. Patio furniture, $380. Grill accessories, $150. Garden equipment, $120. Snowblower, $400. Miscellaneous guest room furniture, $800. Bathroom renovation, $500. Decorations, $300. Emergency contributions, $1,200. Total, $12,247. $12,000. I had essentially furnished their home while living modestly and budgeting carefully. I called a lawyer. If you have receipts proving purchase, and the items were gifts with no written ownership transfer agreement, you retain legal ownership, the attorney explained. Gifts can be revoked if implied conditions weren't met. What kind of implied condition? In your case, inclusion in family activities and recognition as a valued family member. If that condition was consistently violated, you have grounds to reclaim your property. The legal validation mattered, but the moral clarity mattered more. I wasn't planning to steal. I was planning to reclaim what was mine from people who had accepted my generosity while excluding me from their definition of family. With professional validation and legal clarity, I began planning the most important decision of my adult life. My company had been encouraging remote work, and my boss had mentioned my role could be done from anywhere. "This is perfect timing," my boss said when I requested relocation to Portland. "We've been wanting West Coast expansion. When were you thinking of moving?" Within 2 weeks, I found the perfect apartment. The apartment was real, a 1-bedroom in Portland's Pearl District that Audrey had found. More expensive than Denver, but the company agreed to a cost of living adjustment. I researched moving companies specializing in long-distance relocations on short notice. I found one that could pack my Denver belongings, stop in Phoenix to collect items from my parents' house, and transport everything to Portland. The timing was perfect. 7 days in Cabo. I could coordinate everything while they were gone. I drafted a letter, not angry but clear and calm. 6 drafts to get the tone right, firm but not hostile. By the time you read this, I will have relocated to Portland and reclaimed the belongings I purchased for your home. This decision comes after professional consultation about our family dynamics. I explained the pattern, the financial calculations, the emotional toll of being excluded while expected to contribute. I made clear I wasn't cutting contact entirely, but future relationships needed mutual respect and genuine inclusion. I hope someday we can build a healthier relationship based on genuine appreciation rather than expectation. Until then, I need distance to heal. As I finalize logistics, moving company scheduled, apartment leased, work arrangements confirmed, letter drafted, I felt complete clarity about my worth and what I deserved. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-respect? Let me know in the comments, because what happened next changed everything. While they were posting sunset selfies in Cabo, I was about to give them a homecoming they'd never forget. Tuesday morning arrived with crisp clarity. I drove from Denver to Phoenix following the moving truck that would help me reclaim 4 years of my life. Day 3 of their luxury vacation. Perfect timing as they posted beachside massage photos while I prepared to show them the real cost of excluding someone who had subsidized their lifestyle. The moving crew was professional, 3 men specializing in estate cleanouts. "Ma'am, we'll need identification and proof of ownership," Crew Chief Miguel explained. I handed him a thick folder, driver's license, purchase receipts, photos of me giving items as gifts, text screenshots where my parents thanked me for specific purchases. "This is the most organized reclamation I've ever seen," Miguel said, flipping through documentation. "You've got everything documented." "I keep good records." We started with big items. The 65-inch TV came down first, Miguel checking it against my receipt. The soundbar followed, then the leather recliner from Dad's Father's Day gift. Mrs. Patterson next door abandoned subtlety and stood in her yard, openly watching. I walked over to explain. "I'm reclaiming items I purchased for my parents. Everything's documented and legal. Just wanted you to know in case you were concerned." Her expression shifted to understanding. "Are your parents okay? This seems like a lot of stuff." "They're fine. They're in Cabo, actually. This is just a family matter that needed resolving while they were away." She nodded knowingly. 15 years next door meant she'd witnessed enough family dynamics. "Well, you're being very respectful about it." The movers worked systematically. Kitchen appliances, KitchenAid mixer, Keurig, food processor, knife set. Each item wrapped, documented, loaded with care. "Ma'am, are you sure about the lawnmower?" Miguel asked at the garage. "That's a big item." I showed him the receipt from Dad's birthday. "I have the receipt. It's mine." By noon, the truck was nearly full and the house looked noticeably different. As we moved through rooms I'd helped furnish, memories surfaced. The coffee table where we'd played board games, the lamps providing warm holiday light, the iPad I'd bought Mom for easier video chats. Each item had represented hope that my contributions would earn me a place in their hearts, that my generosity would be reciprocated with genuine inclusion. Now those items were being loaded onto a truck, physical evidence of a one-sided relationship. The afternoon brought smaller items, electronics, decorations, household goods accumulated over years of gift-giving. Every item had a corresponding receipt, cross-referenced on my spreadsheet. "You should work in logistics," Miguel commented, loading the printer I'd bought for Dad's business. "I've never seen anyone this prepared." The house transformed before our eyes. The living room, once furnished with my contributions, now looked sparse. The kitchen, stripped of my appliances, revealed aged original fixtures. The guest room I'd furnished was empty except for the old bed frame. The most symbolic moment came with family photos. I had paid to professionally frame several over the years. Most included me, but some were curated shots featuring only my parents and Stacie. I left the photos behind, but the frames, the expensive, custom frames I'd purchased, those came with me. "Are you taking the pictures too?" Miguel asked, holding last year's Christmas photo. "Just the frames. The pictures belong to them. The frames belong to me." It was a small distinction, but important. I wasn't erasing family memories or causing unnecessary pain. I was simply reclaiming what was mine. By 4 p.m., everything on my list had been loaded and documented. The house looked different, not destroyed, but noticeably diminished. The difference between a home furnished with love and a house with just basics. I did a final walkthrough with Miguel, checking each room against my inventory. Nothing damaged, nothing taken that wasn't documented as mine. "This is the cleanest property reclamation I've ever supervised," Miguel said. "You've handled this like a professional." I placed my house key on the kitchen counter, along with the letter I'd crafted explaining my actions, outlining the behavior pattern that led to this decision, and establishing boundaries for any future relationship. Standing in the kitchen where I'd shared countless family meals, I felt 26 years settling around me. This was where I'd learned to walk, done homework, announced college acceptance, and my first job offer. It was also where I'd learned that love could be conditional, family transactional, and generosity exploited by people supposed to protect you. The final symbolic act was removing the family photo I'd paid to frame on the mantel, Stacie's high school graduation, where we all smiled. I left the photo but took the $150 custom frame. Walking through the house one last time, I felt complete clarity about my worth and what I deserved from people in my life. The moving truck pulled away at 5 p.m., followed by my car. In my rearview mirror, I watched my childhood home disappear. The 18-hour drive to Portland included an overnight stop in Salt Lake City. I spent the night surrounded by boxes containing 4 years of misplaced hope, feeling more at peace than I had in years. I wasn't running away from my family. I was running toward a life where my contributions would be valued, my presence wanted, and my love wouldn't be taken for granted. By the time they returned from Cabo, I would be 1,200 miles away, starting fresh, where nobody expected me to fund my own exclusion. The real question wasn't whether they would understand my decision, but whether they would finally understand what they had lost. The first call came at 11:47 p.m. on Sunday, exactly 3 hours after their flight from Cabo had landed in Phoenix. I was in my new Portland apartment surrounded by boxes and eating takeout Chinese food when my phone started buzzing with Dad's contact information. I let it go to voicemail. The second call came 2 minutes later, then a third. By midnight, I had 7 missed calls and a string of increasingly frantic text messages. "Tessie, call us immediately. Something's happened to the house." "Where is our stuff?" "Call us now. This isn't funny." I poured myself a glass of wine and listened to the voicemails in chronological order, watching the progression from confusion to panic to rage. The first message was Dad's voice, bewildered and shaky. "Tessie, honey, we just got home and I don't understand what happened. The TV is gone, the furniture is missing. Did we get robbed? Please call us back right away." By the fourth message, the tone had shifted dramatically. "Tessie, I found your letter. I can't believe you would do this to your own family. How could you steal from us while we were away? This is unbelievable. Call me back immediately." The seventh and final message was Mom, crying. "Tessie, please, I don't understand why you're doing this to us. We love you. We've always loved you. Please come home so we can talk about this. Please." I saved all the messages and took screenshots of the text conversation. Documentation would be important if this escalated. The next morning brought a new wave of contact attempts. This time I answered. "Tessie, thank God." Dad's voice was tight with controlled anger. "You need to come home right now and return everything you stole from us." "I didn't steal anything, Dad," I said calmly. "I took what I paid for. I have receipts for everything." "Those were gifts. You can't just take back gifts." "Gifts given with the expectation of being included in family activities," I replied. When that expectation was consistently violated, the implied contract was broken. There was a long pause. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means I'm done funding my own exclusion from this family. You can't just destroy our family because you're upset about one vacation. This isn't about one vacation, Dad. This is about 26 years of being treated like a second-class family member while being expected to contribute like a first-class one. The conversation continued for 20 minutes, cycling through anger, guilt, and desperate attempts at negotiation. Dad threatened to call the police until I reminded him that I had legal documentation proving ownership of everything I'd taken. Mom got on the phone and cried, asking how I could do this to the people who raised me. The people who raised me also excluded me from family vacations while accepting my money for family emergencies, I said. The people who raised me celebrated Stacie getting a part-time job more than they celebrated my promotion to senior coordinator. That's not true, Mom protested weakly. I have screenshots of the family group chat, Mom. I have bank records. I have 4 years of documentation showing exactly how this family treats its members differently. The next few days brought an escalating campaign of guilt, manipulation, and pressure that would have worked on the old version of me. Extended family members started calling, aunts and uncles who had been fed a carefully edited version of events that painted me as an ungrateful daughter who had stolen from her loving parents. Your parents are devastated, Aunt Linda informed me during a particularly aggressive phone call. They gave you everything, and this is how you repay them. Did they mention the $8,500 luxury vacation they took without me, while claiming they couldn't afford to include me? I asked. The silence that followed told me they hadn't heard that part of the story. Uncle Mike tried a different approach. Family is family, Tessie. You work through problems. You don't run away and steal people's belongings. I worked through problems for 26 years, I replied. I contributed over $12,000 to their household while being consistently excluded from family activities. At what point does working through problems become enabling abuse? The word abuse seemed to shock people into silence. It was a strong word, but Dr. Sherman had been clear that systematic devaluation and financial manipulation within family systems constituted emotional abuse, even when it was subtle. Dad tried calling my boss, attempting to get me fired for stealing company time to move my belongings. My boss, who had approved my remote work arrangement and knew I had taken vacation days for the move, was not impressed. Your father called the office, my boss mentioned during our weekly check-in. He seemed to think you had done something illegal. I told him that your personal life was none of the company's business as long as your work performance remained excellent. I'm sorry he involved my workplace, I said. That was inappropriate. Don't worry about it, but Tessie, if you need any support or resources for dealing with family issues, HR has some excellent programs available. The most painful pressure came from Mom's emotional manipulation. She called daily, sometimes multiple times, with variations on the same theme. I was destroying the family, breaking her heart, and throwing away 26 years of love over material possessions. Those aren't just material possessions, Mom, I explained during one particularly difficult call. They represent 4 years of me trying to buy my way into a family that had already decided I didn't fully belong. That's not true, she sobbed. We love you. We've always loved you. Love isn't just a feeling, Mom. It's actions. It's inclusion. It's treating people with equal respect and consideration. When did you last celebrate one of my achievements the way you celebrate Stacie's? She couldn't answer. The breakthrough came from the most unexpected source, Stacie herself. 3 weeks after the Cabo incident, she called me directly, not as part of a family intervention, but for a private conversation. Tessie, she said, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay. Did Mom and Dad really spend $8,500 on that vacation? I was surprised by the directness of the question. Yes, I have screenshots of the booking confirmation. And they told you they couldn't afford to include you? They said it was too expensive and too complicated to add a third person. There was a long pause. Tessie, I never asked them to exclude you. I didn't even know you wanted to come until after we got back and all this happened. I know, I said. This isn't about you, Stacie. This is about a pattern that's been going on our entire lives. What pattern? So I told her. I told her about the birthday parties, the laptops, the cars, the graduation speech. I told her about the financial contributions, the emotional labor, the consistent message that her needs mattered more than mine. I never realized, she said quietly. I mean, I knew they helped me more, but I thought it was because I needed more help. I thought you were just naturally better at everything. I wasn't naturally better. I just learned early that I had to be perfect to get any attention at all. Tessie, I'm so sorry. I never saw it from your perspective. I never realized how much you were contributing or how little recognition you were getting. It was the first genuine apology I had received from anyone in my family, and it meant more than I had expected. I don't want you to feel guilty about being loved, Stacie, I said. I just want to be loved too, equally, consistently. What can I do to help fix this? Start by having honest conversations with Mom and Dad about the family dynamics. Help them understand that loving one daughter more doesn't mean they have to love the other one less. For the first time in our adult lives, Stacie and I began building a genuine relationship, one based on honesty rather than competition, understanding rather than resentment. It was a small victory, but it gave me hope that some relationships could be salvaged, even if others needed to be fundamentally restructured. 6 months later, I'm writing this from my Portland apartment, surrounded by the items I reclaimed and the life I've built. The KitchenAid mixer finally serves my own baking instead of unappreciated family contributions. My career has flourished without the constant drain of family crisis management. I'm now leading a 5-person team on the West Coast expansion. Audrey and I have grown closer, and I've built genuine friendships with people who celebrate my successes. When I received a major industry award last month, my friends threw a surprise party, a stark contrast to my family's lukewarm responses to past achievements. Stacie and I now have an honest relationship. We talk weekly about our lives and goals, not family drama. She's in therapy addressing her role in our dynamics and setting her own boundaries with our parents. I never realized the pressure you were under to be perfect, she recently told me, or how much I was enabled to be imperfect. Contact with my parents remains limited and conditional. They want reconciliation, but expect me to return their belongings and resume my old role. I've been clear. Any relationship must be based on mutual respect and genuine inclusion. We miss you, Mom said during our last call. You miss what I provided, I corrected. When you're ready to miss who I am as a person, we can talk. The most profound change is in my relationship with myself. My worth isn't determined by their ability to see it. Setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was self-love. I've learned that healthy love doesn't require constant earning. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear they deserve better. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is choose yourself first. What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below. As I watch the Portland sunset from my balcony, I realize I didn't lose a family. I found my self-respect, and that was worth everything.